Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news. You're listening to the Bloomberg Balance of Power podcast. Catch us live weekdays at noon and 5 p.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts or watch us live on YouTube.
Thanks for being here on the Tuesday edition of Balance of Power. Here we go again, high noon on the East Coast with a lot to report and a lot to talk about. It's been a doozy of a day already, and it's not even half over here in the nation's capital as we bring you live coverage on Bloomberg Radio, satellite radio channel 121, and of course on YouTube. Meet us now because we're about to show you something really cool. Tyler Kendall's got a little gift for you. Going to bring you behind the scenes on Capitol Hill. Search Bloomberg Business News Live, and you'll add our cameras to our microphones. Great to be as well on Bloomberg Originals as we cover every platform on the planet here on the fastest show in politics because we've got a lot to bring to you. It's not every day the parents show up at the party, but it happened a short time ago. First thing this morning, Donald Trump, as promised, on Capitol Hill to do some cajoling, you might say, twist some arms, whatever you want to call it, to get the bill passed, knowing that there are grandstanders, as he likes to call them, actual lawmakers, members of his own Republican Party who don't love what they're seeing in this legislation. And this is the signature achievement, or so they want to claim, extending the Trump tax cuts, of course, cutting spending on the federal level and doing so much when it comes to no taxes on tips, overtime, and the rest. Then there's SALT. We're going to get to that in a moment. That's where Tyler comes in. But let's listen to President Trump, by the way. Four gaggles? 4 gaggles in 2 hours? Producer James counting for us. Here's the boss on the way in.
Well, it's not a question of holdouts. We have a tremendously unified party. I don't think we've ever had a party like this. There are some people that want a couple of things that maybe I don't like or that they're not going to get. I think we're a very unified party. The Senate's doing great. John Thune is doing fantastically. He's a great guy. And we're going to have a bill, the one big beautiful bill. I think it's going to be the biggest bill ever passed, and we got to get it done.
Well, it may not have been one big, beautiful meeting when they went behind closed doors. The headline on the terminal, Trump pushes SALT Republicans to abandon further cap hikes. That's not what people like Mike Lawler want to hear today. If you're a Republican from New York, you've got a lot on the line. And that's why, as I promised to you, Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall is going to bring us behind the scenes now, not into an area of the Capitol that you see a lot. She's actually outside Congressman Lawler's office in the Cannon House office building, having spoken with him a short time ago. Tyler, it's pretty clear, says as it stands right now, he doesn't support the bill.
Yeah, hey, Joe, at this moment, he says that he will not budge on his vote. Now, going into this closed-door meeting with President Trump, we had an idea that it was going to be pretty contentious, considering that President Trump told us reporters that he doesn't really think that there needs to be much changes when it comes to SALT, making it a political issue, saying that it will benefit tax policies in these blue states. But I had the chance to catch up with Congressman Mike Lawler here, taking you here really to the center of the action, which for our radio listeners happens to be an empty hallway at the moment, but really this is where we are going to start to see a lot of the negotiations happen because House Speaker Mike Johnson needs to get these Republicans from high tax states like New York, New Jersey, and California on board in order to pass this reconciliation package. Now, Mike Lawler told me that he made his point to President Trump pretty clear that lifting the cap to $30,000 from the current $10,000 limit is not going to be enough. He told me that ultimately he respects the president's perspective on this and that he wants to get a bill passed so that the tax cuts do not expire, because that's what's going to happen at the end of the day if they do not pass new tax cut legislation, but that they need to come to an agreement. He said it's going to be up to House leadership whether or not they can get this deal done by House Speaker Mike Johnson's stated goal of Memorial Day, but that House leadership is going to have to put pen to paper, as he said, in order to get a better deal, Joe.
Wow, amazing. Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall with the very latest. Great get, Tyler. Thank you for bringing that to our viewers and listeners. It's amazing. See that? Tyler Kendall shows up. Everybody goes inside their office and closes the door. That's something Mike Dorning knows a little bit about, having covered Capitol Hill for a long time. And we want to add the voice of our Capitol Influence deputy team leader. You know him as Mike Dorning. It's great to see you.
Great to
Mike,
be here.
in the throes of all of this, and I know you're real busy in the newsroom right now.
Been
Donald
doing
Trump
a lot of
says,
typing.
we couldn't even get you on the phone. That was a meeting of love, he said. There was no shouting, despite reports to the contrary. I'm not losing patience, he said. Anyone who told you that is a liar. When you have to say I'm not losing patience out loud.
Then you are losing patience,
What do you think of this?
So it's a tense period. There are people who have important bottom line considerations. This is tough to work out. But there's not much doubt that basically all the Republicans are very supportive of the core provisions. They want the big tax cuts. They want the investment-oriented, business-oriented tax cuts. So we know this is going to, 99% certain, get done. The drama here is there's all these fights happening right now, and it could delay it. And if you care about the SALT deduction, if you care about Medicaid, if you care about how big the deficit is, if you care about these green energy tax breaks, these big stakes are going to be decided by this fighting. And especially if you care about the SALT deduction, this is the last shot to raise it, because none of those Senate Republicans care one whit about this.
How about that?
Unlike in the House, where you have Republican representatives from high tax states like New York, New Jersey, California, in the Senate, there are no Senate Republicans who care about those states.
Well, that means a lot. So it's a lonely world if you're Mike Lawler right now or Nick
This
Lolota.
is your last stand.
This
if
is
you're,
it. Sure.
If you're them.
So what really happened in that meeting based on the leaks and our reporting?
So even though it doesn't really matter to you and me whether this thing gets done until December 31st. If you're a Republican, you want to get it done now before, maybe Trump turns unpopular if there's inflation. Maybe some Republican lawmakers keel over and die. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. When you can get it done, you want it done. And Trump and Mike Johnson have this artificial deadline they've created, Memorial Day, to get it through the House. And that is the way to get stuff done in Congress, is to have a deadline. And even if it's a made-up one, make it feel like that's the moment, because no one's going to give their best offer until you're right up on the line.
Yeah.
And these guys all have strong opinions about what they want, but they also everyone wants to get a deal in the end.
Yeah, of course. Well, if they stay on track here, let's say it gets through Rules Committee at 1 in the morning or whatever this plan is, and then a floor vote, it appears that lawmakers will not have a CBO score to base their vote on. I don't know how unusual that is for the Congressional Budget Office to not have this ready, but does that actually strengthen the hand of Republican leadership to not actually put a number on how expensive this is?
It kind of does, because you've got, this is going to be like hugely big deficit addition,
Moody's,
like
right?
trillions of dollars added to the deficit. The U.S. debt just got downgraded by the last major rating agency. You even had this great story on the Bloomberg terminal moment about Hong Kong pension funds suddenly might not even be able to invest in U.S. government debt anymore because it doesn't meet legal credit, minimums. So you've got all these things going on that might make the debt seem like a bigger deal. But if you can get it through without all that, it helps.
Wow, amazing. I haven't even asked you about the debt limit yet. At some point, an X date is going to drop. Does that light the fires to complete this process? Because, there'll be outrage in our remaining minute here by House members when they see what comes back from the upper chamber. Yeah,
there will be outrage. And that's why they want to keep the debt limit paired to this.
Yes.
There's no actual reason why they have to. They can, under the reconciliation legislation, pass a debt limit in August and wait to do the tax stuff in October like they did last time around, or even like Christmas Eve. But by keeping that debt limit attached to it, then you have this default on the debt that can create this sense of crisis that you have to get the whole thing done now.
Yeah.
And that creates kind of a deadline for August vacation. And the members like going on vacation in August.
We do as well, don't we?
I do.
Could they get that done for us? It would be amazing. Mike, thank you so much. Dropping everything in the newsroom for us. That's the very latest from Washington, courtesy Mike Dorning on our Capitol Influence team and Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall live from Capitol Hill. We'll have a lot more ahead.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Balance of Power podcast. Catch us live weekdays at noon and 5 p.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. You can also listen live on Amazon Alexa from our flagship New York station. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Busy day indeed here in Washington, at least for President Trump, who's now, of course, back at the White House, but earlier spent a good chunk of his morning on Capitol Hill pleading with Republicans to pass his one big, beautiful bill, even though, emerging from that meeting, there remain Republican holdouts from both the conservative and moderate wings, the SALT caucus as well. But President Trump's message emerging from the meeting was they're unified.
Well, it's not a question of holdouts. We have a tremendously unified party. I don't think we've ever had a party like this. There are some people that want a couple of things that maybe I don't like or that they're not going to get. I think we're a very unified party. The Senate's doing great. John Thune is doing fantastically. He's a great guy. And we're going to have a bill, the one big, beautiful bill. I think it's the biggest bill ever passed, and we got to get it done.
Got to get it done, he said. The president saying it was a meeting of love when he emerged following his conversation with the Republican conference. They went behind closed doors for a couple of hours. The president was on Capitol Hill, and there was reporting that things got a bit chippy, and that would be normal for any family meeting. Of course, this is the family meeting that the president called here. He said, "I'm not losing patience. We're ahead of schedule. Anyone who told you that is a liar." Knowing, as Kailey mentioned earlier, that there are SALT Republicans, as they've become known, who are still no votes on this bill. Mike Lawler is one of them from New York, the Republican we spoke with earlier, saying, as it stands right now, I do not support the bill. Nick LaLota, I'm fired up right now. I'm here to fight for my people. Let's get into this with Bryan Steil, the Congressman, Republican from Wisconsin, is with us now from Capitol Hill, having witnessed a lot of these conversations today. Congressman, it's great to have you. The timeline is tight. Speaker wants a floor vote this week. How do you bring all these disparate parties together to agree on one big, beautiful bill?
Often the Republican conference in the House of Representatives is underestimated, yet we continue to over-deliver. This is the home stretch of the negotiations, and no one is going to walk away with 100% of what they want in the bill. I think we have an opportunity to go further. Some of my colleagues on the more moderate side don't want to go that far. What the president came and spoke about was making sure that we're unified, because we have to deliver on the president's agenda, securing the border, protecting the 2017 tax cuts, and making sure that we're prioritizing American families over illegal immigrants. We have the opportunity to do that. I think we'll remain unified, and I think we'll pass this bill in the not too distant future.
Well, what faction, Congressman, is most responsible for the delivery being not able to be achieved yet? Is it the SALT caucus, or is it the conservatives who want to see even more changes to Medicaid, despite President Trump suggesting he doesn't want to see it touched in most ways?
I'd say it's a little bit of everything. Anytime you're in a heated negotiation, in particular with over 220 members, trying to get to an agreement where we can only lose two individuals, it's going to be a push to the end. It is a big, beautiful family, if you will. But I am convinced at the end of the day, the bill itself unquestionably moves the country in the right direction. As drafted, it gives a win to those SALT members. As drafted, it gives a win to conservatives like myself to see spending coming under control. And so while no one's going to walk away with 100% of what they want, the president spoke about making sure that we don't let perfection be the enemy of the good, and we take an opportunity to take a big step in moving this country in the right direction.
Were voices raised in that meeting, Congressman? Was there shouting, as some had reported?
No, I think it was actually a pretty civil conversation, people putting forward their policy ideas and suggestions, and the president making sure that it was clear that we are our strongest position to get this country back on track when we're united. And I think the overwhelming majority of the members walked out understanding that message, and we are united because we have a huge opportunity in front of us to move this agenda forward. I think at the end of the day, we're going to see Republicans come together. Often in the broader media ecosystem, Republicans in the House conference are underestimated, yet we over-deliver, and I think you're going to see us do that once again.
Well, Congressman, you said something a moment ago about being a conservative who wants to see spending brought under control. And if you look at the analysis from Moody's, they do not believe the fiscal policy proposals currently on the table, what's being discussed by you and your colleagues, would bring spending adequately under control or address the deficit and the interest costs of the United States in a material way, hence the downgrade of the U.S.'s credit rating. I ask you this knowing you sit on the Financial Services Committee. Do you think Moody's has it wrong?
Well, I think what we're seeing is this bill is a step in the right direction. Would I like to go further? Absolutely. We have a serious and significant long-term structural deficit, in particular brought upon by 4 reckless years of spending under the Biden administration. That said, this is a step in the right direction. And so, as President Reagan would say, if you can take half a loaf, take half a loaf. I think that's what it is in front of us, an opportunity to secure and lock in the Trump tax reforms that will really unleash economic growth, and an opportunity to continue to invest to secure the border and making sure that we're prioritizing American families over illegal immigrants. All of these are good steps in the right direction. But as we look big picture, there is going to have to be more work done. And I think that you're going to continue to see Republicans in Congress, along with the president, continuing to work to make further actions as we work to get spending further under control.
You know, at the beginning of the year, Congressman, we were talking every day, all day, it seemed like, about the DOGE, Elon Musk budget cuts, and the promise to eliminate some $2 trillion in waste, fraud, and abuse, or at least bad spending. Now that Elon Musk has kind of left the building, he's winding down his role, I realize the DOGE will remain in operation here. It does seem like lawmakers have wrested control over the spending story. Do you feel like Congress has stepped up to get its arms back around spending policy in Washington without interference from the DOGE?
I think it's actually an opportunity for all of us to work together, to work with President Trump's cabinet secretaries, as well as members of Congress who control the purse strings, to make sure that we are good stewards of taxpayer dollars. I think a lot of things were identified where we can make dramatic improvements in the spending here in Washington, D.C. The appropriations process oversees about 25% of total federal government spending. About half of that is in defense. So of the remaining, about 12.5% of total federal spending, we have a huge opportunity to really go in and remove waste, fraud, and abuse. As we look at the broader spending picture, the other 75%, in particular, as we look at Medicaid, I think we make some really good reforms in this legislation to address the waste, fraud, and abuse. So I think we have an opportunity to continue building on the things that were identified by Elon Musk, and then work together with the president's cabinet secretaries, lawmakers here in the House, and we can make some real progress as it relates to federal government spending.
Congressman, given your role as chair of the subcommittee on digital assets within financial services, I do want to ask you about the development out of the U.S. Senate last night. 16 Democrats joining with a majority of Republicans to pass a procedural step forward on the Genius Act, of course, legislation that would regulate stable coins. While this was a bipartisan win, arguably, especially for the crypto community, there were some alterations that were required to get all of that Democratic buy-in. And knowing that this still has to pass on the full Senate floor vote, how easy will it be with those changes to reconcile this with your own mirror effort in the House, the Stable Act?
I think it's exciting that the Senate is moving forward on this bill. Senator Hagerty and I have been in conversations. I look forward to tracking the amendment process on the Senate floor that is going to be ongoing. We have a huge opportunity here to lock in legislation as it relates to stable coins. I think it'll do 2 key things. It'll protect consumers, and it'll make sure that we maintain dollar dominance across the globe. And so I think we're united in that goal. The amendment process is going to be something that we'll be watching here from the House side. My bill, the Stable Act, moved through committee, also with Democratic support. And I think we'll be in a position to move that forward on the floor in the near future. This is a huge opportunity for a big win in the digital blockchain space, and I think we're going to be able to get this across the line.
Will you try to merge those 2 bills, Congressman? And if all of this works when it comes to stablecoin, does that help to unlock legislation for something broader like Fit 21, a broader crypto bill in Congress?
The draft legislation on market structure, which was Fit 21 last Congress, was just introduced. Hopefully we'll be having a hearing on the near future on that in the House Financial Services Committee. It's really both bills that are ultimately needed to truly unlock the golden age of digital assets here in the United States. You need both stablecoin and market structure. I think we have the opportunity to do that. We're going to be advancing quickly here on stablecoin. I think the House version, my bill, the Stable Act, complements well with the Genius Act in the Senate. I think at the end of the day, we'll be able to get one unified piece of legislation as we work to also deliver on the market structure legislation that's so essential. When both get done, I think we will really unlock the digital asset golden age here in the United States.
And Congressman, finally, on both market structure and stablecoins, how complicated is this effort by questions around conflicts of interest in the President of the United States and his family's affiliation with a number of crypto endeavors?
I think we have a big opportunity to actually put forward legislation regulating the space. To my friends that have concerns regarding this being unregulated, they should come to the table and join us in putting forward the regulatory framework that we're working on. All the more reason to make sure that we're putting forward legislation on market structure to make sure our regulators are in a position to address any inappropriate actions. And so I actually think what we see is a need for legislation in this space. The framework that we have put forward on stablecoin garnered a large number of Democrats in the House as well as in the Senate. And I think the market structure bill, as that text is formally introduced in the near future, you'll also see a large number of Democrats coming to the table, recognizing that we have a big opportunity to legislate in this space to really unleash a lot of capital, innovation, development here in the United States.
All right, Congressman, we appreciate you joining us on Balance of Power. As always, Republican Congressman Bryan Steil of Wisconsin, of course, chair of the Digital Assets Subcommittee in House Financial Services here on Bloomberg TV and radio. And the Congressman also making the point multiple times that he thinks Republicans on Capitol Hill are often underestimated and over-deliver. But given what we're hearing out of Congress today, I do wonder how high the prospects for over-delivery are this time around with this reconciliation bill. And it's on that note we turn now to our political panel. Bloomberg Politics contributors Rick Davis and Jeanne Zaino are with us. Rick, of course, Stone Court Capital partner and Republican strategist. Jeanne, Democratic analyst and senior democracy fellow at the Center for the Study of the Presidency and Congress. Rick, when the President of the United States goes to meet with lawmakers in person to plead with them for how much he wants this bill passed, and you still have multiple members, more than you can afford to lose on a House floor vote, coming out and saying there's still no's on this legislation, does that promise over delivery to you?
It's hard to say. It's certainly a chink in the armor. And so I'm a little surprised, actually, the president used the forum of going to the Hill. That's a pretty expansive effort for the president to do. Typically, pick up the phone, make some phone calls, twist some arms, or have some of the recalcitrant folks come over to the White House and put them in the Oval Office. It's awful hard to say no to a president of the United States in the Oval Office. And maybe these are tactics that they'll use later on. But they're starting to run out of time, as you pointed out throughout the program, and if they're going to get this done before Memorial break. So I have seen reporting in just the last few minutes that the speaker is going to start cold sweating some of the SALT caucus in his office. I guess maybe he gets the first crack at it, but it wouldn't surprise me they all wind up in the Oval Office for a seance with the president if they continue to say no to this bill.
Well, they're going to be sitting down, indeed, with the Speaker of the House in less than an hour here. Mike Lawler among those who are pretty upset. Members of the New York delegation, Jeanne, where you are, could be the difference makers here. The president had a pretty direct message for them. Mike Lawler saying earlier, as it stands right now, I do not support the bill. Nick LaLota, I'm fired up. I'm here to fight for my people. Does this bill die in New York?
You know, I wouldn't say that yet. I think there's also the political considerations for all of these folks. Just as an example, if Lawler wants to run for governor, which he seems to, he's going to have a tough time doing that in a state like New York unless he can show he has pushed back on the president. So there's that. They really do believe that the cap should be lifted, and they have made that very, very clear. The lift is already there to the 30,000. They want it higher. They may get there, but I don't think this necessarily ends in New York. The one thing we've seen over and over again is that moderates, usually on the Republican side in the end, will give in. And we may see that. I don't know if that will happen, but provided they're at 30, maybe they get to 40, that may be enough for them. And I do agree with Rick. I think the president may be calling them to the White House. The interesting thing here is Donald Trump has been all over the SALT issue, from being the initial signer of the bill that created it, to moving to Florida to avoid it, to coming back to Long Island saying it needed to be lifted, and now to blame it on the blue state governors. So he also has some ownership on this thing, and I think they will get together and try to resolve that.
Well, it's not just SALT that the president was weighing in on, Rick. He also, according to our reporting, made it clear that he doesn't want to see Medicaid touched beyond waste, fraud, and abuse. And yet there's still conservatives who are suggesting that we need to rethink the federal sharing of Medicaid payments here. Is there a chance that Republicans actually defy the president and do more on entitlements than the president himself wants to see for political reasons?
Well, the reason there's a pinch there, Kailey, is because there are a lot of Republicans in the Freedom Caucus who want to see bigger cuts. And so where are you going to get the bigger cuts? Probably got to go to Medicare to get them. And if you then start taking, an axe to, for instance, the corporate tax piece of this that was expanded under Obamacare, that's a target-rich environment. I think it's priced at about $600 billion. And I can see them going after that. But I think the message the president sent was, don't cut too deep. It's interesting. He didn't, at least the reporting so far, has not been very, very clear as to what message he gave to the deficit hawks. We know he pushed back on Medicare. We know he pushed back on SALT. But did he push back on anybody saying, hey, the deficit's too high? And so these are guys who are not going to go away easily, Chip Roy and company. And so it'll be interesting to see how they factor in, because if they get what they want, there'll be deeper cuts, and those cuts will likely come out of that Medicare program. And then the president's going to be upset.
All right. Our panel in place following our conversation with one member of Congress and on our way to another. Nicole Malliotakis is going to be with us. Of course, one of the SALT Republicans we refer to so often from New York. Rick Davis and Jeanne Zaino, our panelists, thank you so much for the insights. Kailey, we're counting down to this meeting at 2 o'clock. Wouldn't want to be necessarily one of these members in the room with the speaker right now as the president leaves a trail of dust behind him on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, they already got some stern words from the president. The speaker may have some similar ones. We'll, of course, continue to keep you updated here on Bloomberg TV and radio.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Balance of Power podcast. Catch us live weekdays at noon and 5 p.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts or watch us live on YouTube.
Kailey Leinz alongside Joe Mathieu here on Bloomberg TV and radio, and now on Bloomberg Originals as well, as we keep track on this Tuesday of negotiations still ongoing on Capitol Hill over the SALT cap. The speaker actually set to meet with holdout Republicans on budget reconciliation, who of course are holding out over the state and local tax deduction and a cap that they would like to see moved higher, even after President Trump met with Republicans in person at the Capitol today and told SALT Republicans specifically that they should stop demanding a higher cap and just get this thing passed. One who still is not willing to say he'll commit to be a yes vote is Republican Congressman Mike Lawler of New York, who caught up with our colleague Tyler Kendall in the halls of the Capitol earlier.
I made the point. Obviously, I respect the president's perspective on this. We want to get a bill passed. We don't want the tax cuts to expire, because that would be the largest tax increase in American history. But we need to come to an agreement. And I've been very clear from the start that I will not support a tax bill that does not provide real tax relief to my constituents, and that requires lifting the cap on SALT.
And so, indeed, this issue surrounding SALT, something we've talked about for months, in fact, years, has now become one of the most important factors in resolving this entire effort at reconciliation, forwarding the Trump tax cuts, and, of course, cutting spending. Nicole Malliotakis knows a lot about this. We've talked about it many times here on Bloomberg TV and radio. Congresswoman from New York, New York's 11th district, was, in fact, a big part of the SALT caucus. Also sits on the Ways and Means Committee and brings her unique view to us now. Congresswoman, welcome back. It's great to have you. You have more insight here than probably anyone else we're going to speak with today after Mike Lawler. What is your sense? Because I know last time you joined us, you made pretty clear that the $30,000 cap that came out of Ways and Means covered the bulk, I believe 98% of your congressional district. How about your neighbors? What is the number that's going to bring them to a yes?
Look, I can't speak for my colleagues. I know that those who are in Long Island, Westchester County, they face higher property taxes than we do in my district. So, you know, I think, though, at some point you need to know what the best deal is and just take it. I think that it's not just the $30,000 that my constituents are going to benefit from. You know, a $30,000 deduction on SALT not only covers 98% of my district, but it will put thousands of dollars into the pockets of my constituents, allowing them to keep more of their hard-earned money. And then on top of that, you have the child tax credit, which doubled under TCJA, and we're going to add another $500 $2,500, making it a $2,500 per child tax credit for families with children. And if you're a senior citizen, $4,000 additional deduction, which will be roughly $6,000 total per senior citizen. So if you're a married couple, you're talking about $12,000 deduction if you earn up to $75,000 as an individual or $150,000 as a married couple, and then it phases down when you're up until when your salary gets to $175,000 individual, $350,000 for a married couple. So it's a significant tax relief we're talking about for the middle class, and we need to get this bill done, because not only would you see none of this stuff happen, the standard deduction will be cut in half, the child tax credit would be cut in half, all these lower income tax brackets that every single American benefited from would actually then go back up, which, you know, we're talking about trillions of dollars in taxes, not just for individuals, but for businesses as well. And so it is critical that we come together and unite and pass this one beautiful bill, which, you know, is not just about the tax cuts. It's about border security, giving our agents the tools they need to do their job. The president's done an amazing job securing our border and deporting criminals since he's taken office, but they need more resources, they need more manpower. And so this bill would also address that. And then also, really, when it comes to domestic energy, significant production we'll see as a result of this bill as well. So it really is incredibly important for our economy that we get this done. Cannot allow a tax cut to expire, or, by the way, a debt default, which would happen if we don't get the job done.
Well, so Congresswoman, would it be correct to characterize your view here as it's more important for these members who come from swing districts to take advantage of the majority that Republicans currently have to get this bill passed, rather than worry about extending that majority beyond 2026? Because that's their argument. They're in swing districts. If you want to hold on to the majority, they need to make sure they get a higher number here. Is that the wrong way to think about it now?
Look, I think tripling the SALT deduction is a huge win. If they can get it to quadruple to a $40,000 deduction, that is really significant. And that is saving constituents across New York thousands of dollars. And so people will see this, the result of this, in 2026 when they do their taxes. They'll see that they're saving money, not just because of a SALT deduction or an increase in the standard deduction if they choose that, but because of the child tax credit, because of the senior bonus deduction, and because of all the other job-creating pro-growth policies and tax policy that will be in this bill. Look, bonus depreciation, interest deductibility, research and development, 199A. These are all significant, incredibly significant provisions for our economy, for small businesses and large businesses alike. The corporate rate, that is also very critical to our economy. Look, the TCJA, people know, it was millions of jobs were created. You had millions of people lifted out of poverty. You had the lowest unemployment among African Americans and Hispanics. It was significant. We never even saw the full potential, sadly, because of the COVID pandemic. But we can't let any of this expire. We need to not only extend it, make as many provisions as we can permanent, and then add the new provisions that President Trump promised on the campaign trail, and that's what this bill does.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you think the president's visit to Capitol Hill today will actually change minds, Congresswoman, but he was quoted in that meeting to say, if you lose because of SALT, you were going to lose anyway. And I wonder if you actually agree with the principle of that statement.
Look, I don't think an election comes down to the SALT deduction. And if you are tripling the deduction, you are winning for your constituents. You are delivering relief, you're delivering results, and that's what needs to be messaged out there when you go back home. I go back home and I'm telling my constituents that not only are we tripling the deduction, 98% of our district will be covered. If we're able to quadruple it, I'm sure all of my district will be covered. But I've always been focused in the middle class here. I've never been focused on, you know, the billionaires or the millionaires, and I think the majority of Congress has been focused on these middle class tax cuts, and that's what this bill does. Now, I think it may change, and I think what the next offer that comes out of the Speaker's offer should be the one that is accepted, because we need to move forward. We need to pass this bill before Memorial Day. We need to deliver these wins, because if people see, look, if we do nothing, constituents will see a tax hike. That's the bottom line. and then you will lose an election. I say, let's do what we can here, significant relief for state and local taxes, and also let's hold our mayor and governor accountable. Let's remember the reason we need SALT relief to begin with. We need it because our mayor, our governor, Kathy Hochul, the state legislature, the Democrats that run New York are taxing New Yorkers to death. They could easily cut personal income tax rates, just like President Trump did in 2017. They choose not to. They can easily cap property taxes. New York City is the only municipality in New York that does not have a property tax cap. They choose not to. Instead, our mayor and the city council keep increasing the property tax levy year after year after year, hammering New Yorkers to waste their money on things like, billions of dollars for migrant shelters so criminals can wreak havoc on our streets. It is ludicrous. And so, we as a community, as a city, have to also take responsibility and vote for people who don't do that to us.
Congresswoman, of course, you are now satisfied on the SALT issue, but that is one of the only isn't the only outstanding issue still in these negotiations. You, much earlier in this process, were also one of the lawmakers who were raising concerns about cuts to Medicaid being too steep, going beyond waste, fraud, and abuse. And knowing there are still conservative holdouts who are pushing for changes, for example, to the federal share of Medicaid payments, other changes, if the speaker were to acquiesce to some of those desires in order to secure those votes, does he risk losing yours?
He'll lose a lot of votes if they choose to lower the percentage that New York or any other state receives in matching funds for our traditional Medicaid population. Right now, New York receives 50%. I made it very clear from the beginning that I will not support that being lowered. And also the per capita caps on the traditional Medicaid. That is incredibly important. Where New York could potentially kick in a little more, have a little more skin in the game, is on the expansion, where New York only pays 10%, the federal government picks 90% of the share. That I don't think is going to change. It could change, but that is very different than saying we're going to cut the 50% match that New York receives on the Medicaid. I fought very hard to make sure that that provision was left out, and many other members also want to see that out. So I can't imagine that would go in at this point in this stage. I think we have the proper balance here on the Medicaid. We are focused on the fraud, waste, and abuse. We're focused on making sure that the illegal immigrants do not benefit from our Medicaid dollars. And we are ensuring that there are work requirements for able-bodied individuals without dependents who are of working age. That is very reasonable. It is supported by 75% or more of the country. So let's stick to the plan here. Let's focus on what we need to do. Let's get the job done this week, and let's deliver this victory for not just the Republicans and President Trump, but for the entire country, moving this ball forward.
Well, you've framed this as an awfully important day here, Congresswoman, and if things are going to stay on track, it will need to be, whether we get a deal on SALT or some of the other concerns that we've talked about. I wonder if you've received any assurances from your colleagues who are members of the Freedom Caucus, a couple of them who serve on the Rules Committee, any assurances that things are going to go smoothly at 1 o'clock in the morning when this bill hits rules, and that anybody with some protest might use their time on the floor as opposed to committee? What's going to happen in the wee hours of the morning?
Look, I hope the bill gets passed. And what I would tell my colleagues is, let's focus on incremental wins here. We're not going to get everything we want all in this one bill, but this is significant. We're saving the American taxpayers money, making sure their money is being spent appropriately, not on waste, fraud, and abuse. We're rooting that out. We're going to allow the economy to thrive and build on the successes of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017, which we know is successful and was responsible for lifting wages and bringing people out of poverty and giving them jobs. And we cannot afford a $4 trillion tax hike on America. We have to get this done. And what I would also say is, look, we have a $37 trillion debt, yes. We all want to address that, but we need to do it incrementally. This was created over 4 decades, right? We're not going to change it overnight. But whatever we can accomplish as a team, as a Republican united team, will be much better than if you have to work with the Democrats across the aisle. It'll be much more watered down, and you won't get the wins that we have here because they don't believe in the tax cuts that we believe for the middle class. They have made it very clear that they would allow all these tax provisions to expire. if they had control or they had their way. So let's work together. Let's do the best we can. Fight as hard as you can for your district. But when it comes time to vote, you have to vote for it because we need to move this ball forward, and failure is just simply not an option.
All right, Congresswoman, we appreciate you joining us here on Balance of Power. As always, Republican Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis of New York with us live from Capitol Hill.
Thanks for listening to the Balance of Power podcast. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already at Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can find us live every weekday from Washington, D.C. at noontime Eastern at Bloomberg.com.